Hello, everyone.
And Anna is here. Hello, Anna. So
Hello.
let us start. What we are going to talk about now, we are going to talk about the Alteration Program. We will let you know what exactly happened during these few months since April and what key findings, insights, and recommendations for the culture and creative industry sector we have and for the civil society sector as well. So let me start from the fact that this event, which is taking place at the moment, is already the sixth event. We had five of them in April, May, and June, and we started with the Cross-Sectoral Conference, similar to the one we are having at the moment. But then we moved to sectoral events, and we discussed more specific sectoral related topics. For example, in music event, we were networking with colleagues from European countries and Ukraine and discussing how to promote yourself online using digital tools. We also had an amazing literature event for literature and cross-sectoral festivals in cooperation with Book Arsenal from Ukraine, and had participants not only from the European Union and Ukraine, but from other parts of the world as well. And we were talking about how festivals should change in these difficult times and what is the future of festivals for all of us. We were having our visual arts event talking about how to create a meaningful connections and meaningful environment online for visual arts professionals, and how to network and exchange ideas and cooperate efficiently online. We also had our civil society event where we discussed how our civil society activities, our activism changed during these pandemic times and post-pandemic times, and how we can cooperate and encourage community development using digital tools. We also had our performing arts event where we were talking about how theater can be promoted online as well, and how to go digital with your performing art. And this was also a very insightful and interesting event. So if to talk about cross-sectoral conferences, the opening one that we had in April and this one which we're having now, they are built around the concept of the organizational resilience. I suppose some of you may have heard of it. And actually this concept is telling us what are the main blocks or elements of organizational resilience. And these are actually three components. One is dedicated to our internal culture. The second one is dedicated to the leadership style inside of our organization. And the third one is dedicated to specific risk management methodologies and ability to work in uncertain environment. And today we are actually going to cover 2 out of 3 components of these organizational resilience models, because we are going to talk about specific methodology that helps us to make decisions in a chaotic environment. And then we will go to this conversation about our leadership approaches. And then in the end, we will finish with very practical, specific tools that can be used to work online, to communicate with our teams and organize our works or work with our teams online and digital, and also how to organize efficient networking events and hybrid events, which tools we can use for that. One more very important part of our program is actually the Handbook of Project Models. Sana already mentioned it, and very soon, like in a couple of minutes, we will tell you more about it, what it consists of, which elements it has, and how it can be useful for all of you. I would also start with the facts that we have from different researches. These insights of impact of COVID can be found in the research Sana mentioned, and you can see the link to this research, to this study, in the chat. I shared it with you, so if you want, you can check it if you still did not. Let me briefly sum up what was the key impact of COVID, not only on the cultural and creative industries sectors and civil society sectors, but also what is important for us on the international cultural relations, which is the key topic of our Alteration program. We all know that our organizations and our projects had to close our activities temporarily or permanently. This affected with the staff reduction as well, temporary or permanent. We had to cancel most of our local and international trips. With local trips, it was a little bit easier, but we know that we had to go online completely. And unfortunately, our international mobility, our residency programs, study visits, study tours, exchanges, they stopped last year. This affected a lot on many activities in different sectors. Of course, it is important to say that different sectors had different kind of were differently impacted by the COVID, and those sectors and those kind of activities that are directly dependent on the offline events and offline audience engagement, they were impacted the most. For example, the performing arts activities or the concert industry. That led to reduction of income for those industries, unfortunately. There was an interesting shift, which is an outcome and a result of everything that I mentioned, that there was a shift from global relations to regional one, because we didn't have a chance to meet each other and to talk about some global issues at international events, which we are used to. We started to focus more on our internal challenges, and rise of these conversations is noticed in different parts of the world. And one more thing which is worth mentioning is the impact on the import and export flows of cultural goods, again directly connected with all the previous facts which I mentioned. Another important impact of COVID is digitalization, and not only the fact that we all had to quickly develop our digital skills and transform our project models and organizational models quickly, but we also could see inequalities in digital access. From one side, digital tools helped us to reach new audiences, which we sometimes could not reach with our offline activities. And on the other hand, we could see that there are still a lot of people and parts of societies that do not have this digital access to our products and our cultural services, and this is a challenge to be resolved. Another important thing is also the level of populism in all countries, which raised during the last year. And this is mentioned as one of the important impact of COVID, or some process that was even, it already took place before the COVID, I would say, but all the COVID situation impacted that and encouraged, I would say, this level of populism, so it raised a lot. And this especially impacted on the civil society sector and all the disinformation issues and human rights issues, and the opportunity to find clear and specific information online without any misleading facts and propaganda. And to go deeper into these facts and to see specific examples of how different countries approach this situation and try to resolve it, and how different organizations were trying to manage these issues, you can go to this research or the study prepared by the Cultural Relations Platform and find more specific information, data, and numbers about everything that I've just mentioned. I would like to mention that in our handbook, we also have this part, which part of the handbook, which sums up all the insights that were related to the impact of COVID on cultural relations, international cultural relations, that were mentioned by our participants of all that sectoral and cross-sectoral events that we had during April, June. And also I can see the question in the chat that if there will be recordings. Yes, I would like to say that there will be recordings, and later in summer we will publish them, hopefully in July. So you'll be able to hear everything that we are talking about at the moment online on our YouTube channels. Let me move to the next part, and I would like to give a floor to Anna Karnaukh, our expert who was working on development of the handbook together with Darina Zhavlyadova. Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Darina, if you can hear us, for all the great job that you did to prepare this handbook in very short period of time. Anna, can you please tell us a little bit more about the handbook itself, its structure, and what are the most interesting parts to be looked through by our listeners?
Yes, hello everyone once again, and thank you, Iryna, for your kind words. So before actually we go into the presentation of the handbook itself, I will just mention that apart from cases, as colleagues mentioned, there are many recommendations and things that we captured during all the sectoral events of the Alteration Programme. And actually, I would like to start with some of them, just to give you a taste of things that we observed while interacting with professionals from the EU, from Ukraine, and actually from other countries as well. So the bulk part of the conversations was, of course, about digital models and hybrid models that were appearing, especially during the times of the COVID crisis, and something that we understand that will stay with us already forever. And all these points were also something that the majority of participants mentioned. So some of them I would like to highlight in this presentation. So first of all, I would like to point that it's not necessarily always the case that digital models appeared only during the COVID times. It is important to say that the usage of digital models started even before the pandemic, and there were numerous factors for that. So, of course, the increased amount of digital in our lives, and that was the logical continuation that digital tools started to be used in the cultural projects itself. But also there was an important point of ecological mindfulness and the fact that cultural exchange and projects could leave potentially an impact on the carbon footprint. So some of the projects and people who were delivering them, they already started to think about where they could use digital in order to perhaps limit a bit the traveling or the other interactions that could be harmful for environment. While COVID started, of course, the number of digital interactions and tools and the way we engage with the audiences increased drastically. And I think all of you can remember March and April of 2020, when there were so many things all of a sudden appearing online, including cultural projects. Many people started doing lists of things they wanted to engage with, read, enjoy. And yes, that was something that COVID just forced to increase immediately. And what we observed, and this is what participants of all the events mentioned, that at the beginning of pandemic, there was a tendency that organizations were testing digital tools And also the interaction at times was very spontaneous. So there were a lot of social media broadcasts. There was something unplanned that was organized last minute, and audiences were ready to engage with such type of content. Whereas as time was passing, almost all of the participants of Alteration mentioned that audience became more selective and more demanding in terms of the content. And actually that was understood that further on, the models themselves, they need to be more thought through, and the production and the quality of the digital and hybrid content needs to be high enough to be appealing to the audiences. What is important to say is that in the times of pandemic and further on, while speaking about digital and hybrid models, we need to understand that international cultural projects and cultural projects in general, they compete for the audience not only among themselves, but actually with wider players and entertainment platforms like Netflix, for example. And it also became obvious that cultural organizations, they need to understand their audiences better, meaning their patterns of behavior, their preferences while using online tools, and even such things like when do you organize your event, which time of the day, which day of the week. All these details all of a sudden became so important, and they really started to make an impact on the number of people you engage at the end. What was also important continue to be developed in different conferences and events. So how can we, on one hand, expand the portfolio of projects that organizations are doing, how organizations can include really high quality digital products in their portfolio projects, at the same time keeping the capacity of the team controlled and allowing work and life balance of people and the feeling that they are capable of working with digital. So the skills to use digital by cultural and creative sector as well as civil society, that was discussed numerous times. So it is a journey, and obviously there is a feeling that there needs to be an upskilling across all of the sectors that we engaged with. And one more point, Iryna, can we come back please for a second to the previous slide? Is the balance between digital models and hybrid models. So what we observed is that while pandemic started, because of course people couldn't travel and there were a lot of restrictions and limitations on the interaction, many of the projects started to be available online only. However, as time started to unveil, and some of the countries started to reopen their projects and venues, more and more hybrid models started to appear. And this is a very expected process. So what we can say is that during the first year of pandemic, it was the prevailing part of the digital products. Whereas we will see that the hybrid models will start to develop more and more further on. Hybrid models, they are more complex than digital ones because they are more tailored to your organizations and your audiences. Maybe just a reference, by hybrid models, I mean a combination of online and offline activities within one project. So of course, those models, they are less described yet because there were not so many instances of using hybrid models as it was with digital. But just to go back to the handbook, I would like to say that we tried to cover both digital and hybrid project models. So yeah, just to finish with this slide, I would say that we all should expect more and more of interesting hybrid models to appear. We are very much looking forward to that, and there will be many innovations happening in that specific domain. Key themes. So this is another important thing that we really wanted to capture while engaging with cultural, creative sector and civil society representatives. So we were interested what themes are the most appealing nowadays to the actors, what they would like to raise in their projects, and on which basis they would like to collaborate. Of course, this list of 5 points is not exclusively covering everything, but those are the kind of key trends that we have seen across all the events that we attended. So I will start with the first one, so mental health and well-being of people. Of course, so in 2020, people were forced to stay at home. Many things in life of every person changed. There was an overload of information, an overload of stress, and of course, it all influenced the mental health and well-being of people. And speaking about cultural sector in specifically, so of course, the teams of organizations, they faced the stress of rapid changes, of underspend of underfinancing in their organizations, and of the need to start doing things in the new ways. And as we mentioned before, of the overload, while you have to redesign your projects, but at the same time deliver new models. So everything of that has been raised as one of the key topics. And the feeling is that even if hopefully pandemics will start to decrease in scope, the mental health and well-being will be still discussed, and that will be so relevant further on. So that means both in terms of the project's content that organizations were creating, but also it is related to the project teams themselves and the cultural organizations. And I will hand to Iryna now.
Thank you, Anna, and I would like to join you in these last 2 points, actually last 3 points, and would like to add a couple of comments regarding the community development. Why this topic became so important, because it became more obvious that if you have very strong community developed around your project, and this community exists in general for your organization and for your project or for your product or cultural service. In this case, it's much more easier to survive any kind of crisis, not only pandemic. So community building a meaningful, strong, connected community really became a priority for many organizations. So the topic is really hot at the moment. And one more thing about the leadership in times of changes. I think for Ukraine, it is a constant hot theme, because in Ukraine we are always facing many different kinds of challenges. But what we lack meaningful and professional conversations among leaders of different projects and organizations about how exactly we can develop our leadership skills, which specific methods, techniques, tools, approaches we can use to become more efficient leaders and supporters for our teams, which tools and instruments we can use to make very clear and informative decisions. And this is actually one of the reasons why we have Dave Snowden today in the agenda of our event, and Marina Starodubska, because they are going to talk about these very specific things. And talking about cross-sectoral collaborations, actually our Alteration program was also somehow our trying to give these cross-sectoral collaborations. And during many sectoral events, it was mentioned that cooperating with other sectors and going outside of your bubble, I would say, can be really helpful. And what we can see today is that, for example, cooperation of the civil society sector and the cultural sector with the IT sector can be really important and mainstreaming in future. So we would like to pay your attention on that as well. And moving forward, we would like to go to the recommendations part. Before we start discussing that, I would like to remind you that you can put your questions or your feedback, your reflection on what we are talking about in the event chat. We will be happy to answer all your questions. And also, I already put a link to the handbook, which we are presenting to you at the moment. So you can already start downloading it, and we will now talk in more details about some cases that are there in the handbook. So there are not only cases, but also recommendations for the wide range of stakeholders, which we would like to highlight now. So I already mentioned that just a moment ago, that it is crucially important to stimulate innovation and collaborations. There is a good example of how one European program is doing that at the moment. This is an example of House of Europe, which is, by the way, a part of our project models handbook. So you can read about this story, how they created the project there. And I'm talking about the hackathon for culture and creative industries and technologies. They had this hackathon last year for the first time during the pandemic, in the high period of pandemic. And next week there will be a second edition of this hackathon. And this is a good case and it's a good example of how big European programs can support and can encourage this, looking for innovative models and looking for collaborations inside the sector and between different sectors. Another thing is improving the accessibility and inclusivity of digital projects. A lot have been said about that by me and Anna today already, and this topic is worth further development in the nearest future. Another thing is digital transformation of organizations and upskilling of teams on digital matters. This year showed us how sometimes unprepared our teams can be for going digital. On the other hand, we are already very good with Zoom, and at the same time, we have the Zoom fatigue already. But it's worth mentioning that knowing how to use Zoom and how to broadcast your events on Facebook, how to do a live stream on Instagram, there are a lot of other very specific digital skills that are supposed to be developed inside of our teams. This relates to working with online task managers, with online software and tools which can help us to organize our documents, which can help us organize our communication between the remote teams, which sometimes are based in different parts of the world, not only different parts of the countries. This is about knowing how to solve some technical issue if you have it with your laptop during the online event, and how to fix some technical problem with your software, how to record videos, and how to edit videos and visuals to use them for your online activities, and another long list of skills. It became obvious that bringing new stuff is a bit challenging when there is a crisis and when your organization is trying to survive. So this means that we need to constantly develop these digital skills inside of our teams and organizations among those teammates which we already have. Because bringing new professionals and bringing technical specialists can be sometimes really expensive, and in some cases not possible for cultural institutions or for cultural projects. One more thing is about transforming leadership, and this is really related to the topic of the well-being and psychological health of our teams, of our colleagues. This is about leadership not only in terms of I am a manager, how can I become a leader, but also leadership among all the team members. So how can we support our teams having different roles inside of them? How can we organize communication in a way which is helpful for our teams? How can we build a healthy culture inside of our team so that it was supportive and it had the atmosphere of trust and hope for the better times? How can we solve conflicts and crises inside of our teams? How can we manage the workload among our colleagues, and so on and so on. And we will talk very deeply on this topic with Marina Starodubska today, so I welcome you to join. Anna, maybe you would like to join here and continue, and I will add a few comments in the end.
Yeah, sure. The next point, what we would like to highlight, almost again, all the participants of Alteration Program, they mentioned that for them, it was really valuable to get together in such challenging times and have the opportunity to discuss. So what they have managed to transform, key lessons, key challenges, and basically just provide some support to each other and feel that you have a strong shoulder from other representatives of the sector. So as a recommendation, we would really would like to highlight that platforms and opportunities for peer-to-peer learning, resources for that, they are very much valued by sector representatives. And again, referencing to the handbook, this is one of the tools of actually getting to know what your colleagues are doing and getting inspired by things other actors have already tested. And last but not least here is that across all of the events, organizations, they've mentioned that they would like to get more support and programs in such strands as methods how to engage with community and actually how to develop communities, and how to use the power of arts, of culture in terms of community development. Because obviously there is a feeling that specifically arts and culture projects can play a crucial role in community development. Also audience development, so how to work with existing audiences, how to increase audiences, how to be mindful to audiences you are not working but would like to work with. So techniques, practices, and approaches towards that, they would be also very valued by no matter which sector the organization represents. Also mainstreaming inclusion, so referencing back to the fact that digital is not inclusive at all, yet how we can make it more inclusive. And it's not only about digital inclusivity, but other factors, how to be more mindful and inclusive, especially in such challenging times. That is another factor that organizations would like to explore. I won't repeat the well-being, yet would come back to ecological mindfulness. So how cultural and creative organization and civic ones, how they can actually start to become more ecologically mindful themselves in their everyday work, in the way the teams are organized, and at the same time, how they can broadcast that ecological mindfulness via things they curate, things they deliver and do. So regarding ecology, yes, there was a feeling that it is becoming more and more relevant, and organizations would like to explore that fact in frames of different programs and discussions and platforms. And maybe I would also, before we go deeply into the handbook, I would like also to say that in this presentation, we are focusing on digital and hybrid project models. Yet what we felt is that the majority of cultural actors, they really miss online. They really enjoy online, and those who came back somehow to online already, they were so happy to see people just face-to-face, to engage after all the digital screens and just being stuck at home. And of course, there will be a tendency that more and more offline events will be coming back, hopefully. At the same time, we do have a feeling that once organizations started to experience some of the digital products, tools, they won't just completely stop using them, just because in some of the cases, in some of the projects, in some specific types of the interaction, it makes complete sense to use digital. And this is maybe what we would like to say. So digital, of course, is not the answer. And it's not a universal pill that will help to solve all of the problems. What would really help is that mindful approach where we understand the benefits and the challenges of online, but of also digital and hybrid models. And we really understand why in that specific situation we use that specific model. Yeah, and speaking about models, so finally we would like to show you the cover of the handbook. It is not only about case models, even though they take the majority of the publication volume. So just to take you through what you can also find there, except for the cases themselves. So yeah, 17 cases, but also we try to collect from different participants and from those with whom we interacted while collecting case studies information. So we gathered the tools people were mentioning. We also did some additional research, and we offered a list of tools. Some of them, like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, of course, you know, but some of them, we hope, will be less discovered by you, and we hope that maybe you will get inspired to use at least some of them. Also, what we covered in the handbook is the networks mapping. So networks of a culture and creative sector and civil society. So the idea is that while using a handbook, you can go through project models and get inspired. At the same time, maybe if you haven't been yet collaborating or your collaboration stopped during the pandemic, we try to give you resources, mainly links of networks, where you can find more information about your sector, where potentially you could find new partners, or you just could approach asking more information in the sector that you would be interested. So we hope this will be a useful resource for a wider group of readers. So, and there can be numerous purposes how a mapping can be useful for you. Of course, we also covered in the handbook key lessons and recommendations. Some of them we already touched in this presentation, but just to make it clear, those were not all of them. So we do encourage you to go into the handbook and read everything we managed to capture. So speaking about the cases, what I would like to point out is that neither we speak about the best cases that happened in 2020 and 2021. So neither way we are saying those were the best projects. What we tried to cover is that we wanted to offer the audience some typical models how digital and hybrid projects could be organized. So meaning what could be the combination of tools, how actually people ensured transformation, or how they launched such products. Also, we were considering that in every project, there needed to be the connection between countries. So the spirit of international links is always there. So the type of interaction is different. So in certain projects, there is a very tight collaboration between at least two countries or more. Whereas in some projects, it's a bit of a different character, but still in every project it is there. And also a criteria for every project was that it could be inspirational for other actors, and some of its parts could be used further on by the readers of the handbook. I would also like to answer the question how we collected those cases. So we used the scheme of nominations, where we asked project partners, project participants, and also key organizations in culture and civil society in Ukraine and EU to nominate cases that they considered were worth including in the handbook. And also, while compiling the list, we were aiming to showcase what was happening in Ukraine, because obviously Alteration Programme is very much connected to Ukraine. But we also wanted to showcase some of the projects and models that existed in the EU between other EU countries. So not necessarily you will see Ukraine reflected in every project model, even though I can say that there is quite enough of Ukraine present. And actually, I think it's a very pleasing factor that Ukraine continued to collaborate in such challenging times. Also about the structure, so there are 17 cases, and they are grouped according to 3 main themes. So the first theme is about how to engage with wide audience. So all the projects which are within the first group, they are actually were engaging with wide audiences, no matter from which sector they were coming. The second group within the toolkit is about how to run capacity building projects for the sector in the new normal. And here, again, there were projects coming from different sectors, yet the element of capacity building and giving some upscaling to the sector, that was like a key theme. And the third group is actually about professional networking and sectoral links, how to ensure them in pandemic times, but beyond, because that is important to mention that numerous times it was said that digital can be not always a solution while interacting with wide audiences, yet digital showed very big potential while doing sectoral events and professional capacity building and networking. So we would really encourage you to read those specific models, and maybe some of the examples would be relevant to your work. Iryna, can we go to the previous slide, please? So those 2 pages, they represent you a very typical way that each case study is presented. So you can see that on the left, there is a name of the project model. So you can search by maybe the type of the project model that you would be interested. And on the left, you can see the basic information about the project, just to understand the context. So who are the partners? What is the funding? When the project was delivered? Was it launched or just changed during the COVID times? So all that you can also understand. And then we propose to dive into the case itself. So each project we present via such theme groups. So how actually the model was delivered? So what were the results? What was the audience? And key lessons learned by that specific project team, and what is coming next. So I would really encourage, of course, to read everything, but especially, can we please come back? So especially the how it was done section and lessons learned section, because they capture most of the insights that those specific projects team were sharing. Also, what I would like to say is that you can see all of the projects that were highlighted at the end of the handbook. So you can see it page by page and you can check it there. Apart from that, we also included some of the cases additionally, not as case studies, but also we mentioned them because we think they can be inspiring models to check. With not all of the projects, we were able to engage in a case study mode just because there were limitations on the page numbers. Some of the teams were very busy and we couldn't in a short notice collaborate with them on getting information. Nevertheless, there are 2 pages where you can see some additional inspiring projects. The link is available. It is in the chat. Yet, if you miss it now during the broadcast, you can always find the publication at the websites of Alteration Programme Partners. So here are the links and also the social media. And we hope you will enjoy the publication. And maybe the last point is that it is in English, but the key lessons and recommendations, they are also available in Ukrainian. So we hope that it will be also a useful opportunity for some wider actors. That's all for me.
Yeah, and yes, we will share the links to this handbook on our social media, Facebook page of the Cultural Relations Platform, the delegation of the European Union to Ukraine, and the Ukrainian Institute. You can already save links from the chat of this event, and we welcome you to share it with your colleagues and to disseminate it. I also wanted to add that how we came up with this idea of creating this specific kind of handbook. While preparing the alteration program, we realized that there are already pretty big amount of studies and researches or about the impact of COVID on the culture and creative industries in different specific sectors or in different countries. And I think they will continue appearing this year as well, because most of the research is available at the moment. They were conducted last year, so during the pandemic itself, but it would be really interesting to analyze the situation after it hopefully ends, or at least the peak of it ends. But what we could not find was the specific examples of how organizations changed. Although that there was a high demand among the sector's representatives to talk to colleagues and to ask questions. How did you organize a festival? How did you go online? Was it efficient or not? And that's actually how we came up with this idea. And I would like to thank Anna and Iryna one more time for doing this great job. And would like to thank all the partners and organizations and professionals who nominated projects and who shared their stories with us. Yes, Anna, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just wanted to mirror on something you were saying, just maybe as a closing note, that while preparing the publication, we really felt that we are doing something new. While there were researches on the COVID impact, we felt that such kind of practical tools, how projects can carry on, how they can collaborate, there were none of such kind. So it's just a compliment for all of the program partners. Great that you initiated this handbook. And also, of course, I guess this handbook should be taken as a document of time. So this is very relevant nowadays, and I think in a couple of years it would be interesting how the projects were in 20 and 21. Yet of course we understand that, you know, now we are living in such a dynamic time that even in a year things will change, and hopefully maybe there will be another edition of the toolkit, of the handbook. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and we also, by this handbook, we also would like to invite you to share your experiences, to tell your stories, and to share them with your colleagues, because all the wisdom is among the audience, in the audience. So it's among the institutions, it's on the grassroots. So we welcome you to share your experience as well. And unfortunately, we have to finish now and have a short break. But Anya, I see that there is a question in the chat about any relevant example tracking climate concerns and ecology in the CCS. So maybe if you have a good example or can share some case, you can do it in the chat so that Ziad had answer to his question. And I also welcome all the listeners, all the participants of the event to share any cases here in the chat as well, if you find them interesting and potentially useful for our conference attendees. Thank you, Anna, one more time for this interesting presentation and for all the work done with the handbook. And now I would like to announce a short break, and we will continue with an amazing speaker, Professor Dave Snowden, the author of the Kinevan framework. I will put a link to one interesting Harvard Business Review article about this framework here in the chat, so you can check it during the break. And in 7 minutes at 11:20 Kyiv time, we will continue with Professor Dave Snowden. Thank you.